If you are listening to this podcast right now, I need you to say a prayer for me because unfortunately, I am becoming more not only like my mother, but like my grandmother. Welcome to Christianish. My name is Keshia Rice, and this podcast is for women who have Bibles but struggle with boundaries. And we talk all things dating and relationships because I am a dating coach and a hypnotherapist. And I help women heal from their unhealthy relationship patterns, heal their mindsets, and attract healthy love. So, this whole thing of becoming like my mom and my grandmother. When I was growing up, I used to constantly hear these two women say, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? In terms of talking about dating and relationships. And you're probably familiar with that saying. You're familiar with this whole idea that normally that saying is talking about sex. That why should a man bother to marry you if you are going to sleep with him, before you get married? And I have always had issues. I would even say I've had beef with that phrase because while I do think it is wise to wait until marriage for sex, because sex involves hormones, it involves emotions, and there's a bond that's formed there that is best reserved for someone that truly loves you, is committed to you, and has your best interest at heart. So I understand the concept. I've always said that people treat the Bible like it's this mystical book, and it really isn't. It is at its center instructions for practical living. Like a lot of the things that you go to church and you hear people say you need to do this or you need to do that in order to be holy. I mean, yeah, and I get the whole emphasis on wanting to be holy and do right by God. And I studied religion in college, so I know that this is not just a Christian thing, right? You see this in Islam, you see this in Judaism, you see this in all of the world religions. Maybe not the word holy, but just this idea of needing to behave a certain way to appease God. But beyond that, again, a lot of the things that you read in the Bible are really just best practices, instructions. Like even when you think about the Old Testament and the rules on eating, a lot of that would have protected people from disease and food poisoning. Or when in the Old Testament it talks, there are verses that speak against wearing garments of mixed materials. Well, in a world that didn't have automatic washing machines and in a climate that was incredibly hot, this was protecting your skin, and it was hygienic and making sure that you didn't sweat as much. So again, there's so much in the Bible that even if you aren't Christian, even if you aren't religious, a lot of it is just practicality. So back to this whole idea of, sex before marriage and not buying the cow when you get the milk for free. I was thinking about all of this because there was a recent episode of Club Shay Shay. I don't know if you've ever watched or listened to that podcast on YouTube, but it is Shannon Sharp, who's a former NFL player. He's interviewing all these different guests. And he has on Country Wayne, who is a comedian. And Country Wayne is talking about how he likes women who are difficult, right? And, I've seen this theme come up so many times that men want a mean girl. Men want a girl who's high maintenance. Men want a woman who is demanding. There's even a book, and excuse the language because, I try to keep this podcast clean. But the title of the book is Why Men Love Bitches, right? So there's all this discussion about men loving mean girls. And I remember not too long ago having a conversation with a friend of mine about this because she was saying that, my husband loves me and how I must be so mean to him. And I told her, no, I'm not mean. I just have boundaries, right? I just have boundaries. I have expectations. I have standards. And I don't fall all over myself to make my husband happy. Like, yes, I want him to be happy. And I sincerely hope that, you know, I was going to say, I hope that I know my husband loves me. I know he's happy in our marriage. But, I hope that I constantly and consistently add to his happiness. At the same time, I'm also always going to do what's best for me. And there's nothing selfish about that when you're in a relationship where the two people are aligned with each other. When you share similar values and hopes and dreams and your beliefs and faith and all of that are aligned with each other, both people are able to do what makes them happy and also add to each other's happiness at the same time. But back to this idea of buying the cow when you can get the milk for free. And what Country Wayne said about liking women who are difficult. It reminded me of a Bible verse in Matthew where Jesus is saying to not cast your pearls before swine, right? And here's the thing. For all the talk on social media about the whole 4B movement and decentering men and men are trash and men are selfish, all of this stuff, it would behoove women to, in some ways, emphasis on some ways, not always, but in some ways, to behave more like men. And what I mean by that is men are selfish and they will always do what is in their best interest. And I have done more than one video on my TikTok, on Instagram. I've possibly done a podcast episode about it. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but if I have, then I will link that in the show notes. But I have talked multiple times about how women need to be more self-centered. Instead of all this talk about decentering men, which if you spend all your time talking about decentering men, you're spending all of your time talking about men, so you're not decentering them. Instead of doing that, you need to center yourself. And that is not selfish. It's the least selfish thing you can do, because when you truly love yourself and you truly take care of yourself, you have so much love that you're able to fill your own cup and you're able to give to others from the overflow. You're able to take your overflow and be a better wife, girlfriend, daughter, niece, sister, any role you can think of. You're able to do all those things better because your cup is filled and you don't feel depleted or resentful by giving to other people because you have more than enough. And this whole thing about men being selfish and why they commit to some women, why they commit to the so-called mean girls who are really just women with high standards, why they commit to those women is this. You teach people how to love you and you teach people how to treat you. So if you accept subpar treatment, you will continue to get more and more subpar treatment. And for a man, men have all sorts of reasons for staying in relationships with a woman who they don't actually want to marry. They may feel like they can't do better. They want kids. So, for a man, it's a sign of his manhood and how healthy his manhood is if he has a bunch of children. So if he can go around, sleep with a bunch of other women and have kids with all these different women, then he can prove that he's truly the man, right? You have men out here who, as I'm recording this episode, is February, so it's winter. You have men who are homosexuals. They have no place to go, so they will get with a woman because she has a place and she'll let him stay at that place. And you have men who want a bang maid, right? They want somebody who they can sleep with, who can cook, who can clean, all of that, and take care of them and be a placeholder until they find the woman they actually want to be with. If you don't believe me, go on the website Reddit, and there's a subreddit called Waiting to Wed. And in Waiting to Wed, you will see women tell so many stories about how they've been dating someone for several years, sometimes decades. They have property with this man. They've bought houses. A lot of times these women are the breadwinners, so they're supporting this man. And they have kids, all of this stuff, and the man still won't marry them because, frankly, the man is holding out, hoping that a woman he truly loves will come along. He is holding out for a better option. But in the meantime, until that better option comes along, you will do. And in order to prevent this from happening to you, you have to stop casting your pearls before swine. And this is not to say necessarily that the man is swine, because I know everyone wants to bash men when they do this and everything. But at the same time, I have seen men treat one woman not so great, right? And then he gets married and he is head over heels to the woman that he marries, and he treats her well, he treats their kids well, he's a good father and husband in that family unit. This is not about the person themselves. This is about the behavior that you are willing to accept from any person. Because again, people will treat you the way that you teach them to treat you. Even the most well-intentioned person. You know, I've seen this happen in friendships before where one person is constantly trauma dumping on their friend, right? And the person who is being dumped on will go to other friends and complain about it and say, I can't stand this. They're always stressing me out. Every time they come to me, they always come to me with problems. But they've never spoken up about it. They've never told this friend to stop. And because of that, the friend who is doing all the dumping assumes that it's not a problem because they've never heard any complaints. They assume that maybe the person likes giving advice and likes being there for them in that way. So even when a person is well-intentioned, if you're not properly setting the standards, you put yourself at risk of bad behavior, of ill treatment. So this whole idea of not casting your pearls before swine is that if you truly want to be a woman who is in a relationship where the relationship is healthy, she's with a man who truly loves her and adores her, and you feel safe in this relationship, you have to have standards and you have to uphold them. You know, it's not just sex, again, which is why to this day I still have an issue with that saying, why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free? But it's also about, you know, if you tell someone that you don't take phone calls past a certain time at night because you need your sleep, then don't accept phone calls. Don't think, oh, well, he's lonely or he must have something really important to talk about. No, he really just wants to see if he can break that boundary. Because if you allow it, he knows that whatever boundaries you set, whatever you say is frankly bullcrap, right? Because you set this boundary, but then, you know, the second there's a chance to break it, you allow him to break it. So set your boundaries, have your standards. The whole money thing, because this is another thing that annoys me as something that I see online. Because a lot of these relationship topics, I'm just going to be real, most of the people who are the loudest about dating and relationships and giving advice, most of the loudest people are people who aren't in relationships. They're single, right? and they don't know what the heck they're talking about. But there's always this debate over whether or not a man should completely provide and pay the majority of the bills, or whether or not 50-50 is okay, or if a woman is okay with being the breadwinner under the conditions that the man is willing to do all the household chores and stuff like that, a reversal of the traditional roles. And I'm not going to tell you how you should go about that in relationships. You need to do what makes you feel happy, right? But if you have whatever standard you set, you need to hold on to it. If you have decided that you want someone who is going to provide for you and pay the majority of the bills, then don't go on dates and allow the date to be 50-50. The second a man pulls that, if that's your standard, the second a man pulls, oh, well, let's split the bill, then go ahead, split it, and then block his number, because that's not somebody who meets your standards. And honestly, if that is your standard, you should want somebody who wants to pay, who wants to take care of you. You shouldn't have to force that. If you say, okay, I could never be in a situation where I was the breadwinner, then set the standard. You don't date anybody who makes significantly less than you, right? Like, and if you find out that you're talking to a man who he's in a career where there's no way his income is ever going to be close to yours, then that's your standard. So you need to go ahead and not get in that relationship. You need to move on and find somebody who's going to meet the standard. Again, I'm not telling you what standards to set, but once you have them, you need to stick to them, because this is how you get respected, right? And honestly, this is why men like Country Wayne in that interview want the girl who is difficult, who has high standards, because she is quote unquote more valuable. And I don't mean that in a way that I'm trying to slam women who have not upheld boundaries and standards before. Because when you know better, you do better. Right? We all make mistakes. We can all learn. But I want you to think about it this way. In society, we're told what is valuable and what is not, right? There's a reason why a lot of people prefer gold over silver, because we're told that the value is higher. The reason why diamonds are so valued is because they are rare, right? It takes work to get diamonds. A lot of unethical work. And if you know anything about the diamond trade, you know that a lot of the diamonds that are mined in like parts of Africa with work conditions that are not great. But the point is, it takes a lot to mine diamonds. And then there's a whole set of categories determining how good of a diamond is. The cut, the clarity, and all that determines its worth. Pearls are also valuable because of the rareness. So with that being the case, it's the same thing with men who love, like the book says, witches with a capital B, men who love women who are more difficult. It's not that these women, again, are difficult or mean. It's that they have standards. So if they come across a bunch of women who allow them to take advantage of them, allow them to treat them badly, allow them to use them as a placeholder, and then that is, 7-8 different women they dated who are like that, and then they meet one woman who tells them, no, you're not going to treat me any kind of way. These are my expectations. If you can't follow these, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Right? If he meets a woman like that after all the time of being able to get away with anything that he wanted to get away with, he's going to value that woman more. He is going to do more to please that woman, to make her happy, because she values herself at that level. So he's going to follow that lead. So, yeah, if you want me to talk more about how to set boundaries and standards, let me know. I am on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Keshia Rice, Keshiarice. Oh, I'm also on Blue Sky at Keshia Rice. So, yeah, you can message me any of those places, and I will definitely be happy to talk more about boundaries and standards. But just know where you place your value on yourself is where others will place your value as well. I will talk to you soon. I love you so much. I value you so much, and I hope that you will value yourself just as much. Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Contessa Digital.